How y'all doing? This is Mongo, and we're gonna talk today about the Million Dollar Man, Ted DiBiase, and this nonprofit welfare scam that apparently him and his son were a part of. Oh well, actually, his son was more a part of it than he was. So we're gonna read the first story. We're gonna read two different stories on it. This story actually came out in February, but I don't think I covered it. So we're just gonna take a step back and we take a look at this. The first story is going to be from Sports Illustrated. The second story is going to be from the New York Post. So I'm going to read the Sports Illustrated story first. Here we go. WWE Hall of Famer Ted DiBiase Sr.'s Christian nonprofit received more than $2 million in federal welfare funds from the state of Mississippi, according to records obtained by the Clarion Ledger. DiBiase, known during his time in WWE as the Million Dollar Man, later became a Christian minister and founded Heart of David Ministries, which received a total of $2.1 million in federal funds through Mississippi Department of Human Services since 2017. The payments began shortly after DiBiase's son, Brett, was hired by the Mississippi Department of Human Services. The younger DiBiase, a former WWE wrestler who worked for Heart of David before being hired as the department's deputy administrator, resigned his post after 9 months. He was one of 6 people indicted last week and accused of embezzling $4.15 million in welfare funds, 48,000 of which was used to pay for Brett's treatment at a luxury drug rehab facility in California. Ted DiBiase Sr.'s name and Heart of David do not appear in the documents. Okay, so Brett DiBiase is the younger Ted DiBiase. This is, if you remember Legacy from when Cody and Randy Orton was all them, that Ted DiBiase is the one we're talking about in this story. His real name is Brett. Okay, there is another Ted DiBiase Jr. That is this Brett DiBiase's brother. So try not to get confused. The focus is Cody's tag team partner is the one we're talking about here. As a libertarian, I'm against a lot of this welfare stuff because of this reason. This is an egregious amount of waste. You give money to people, and you never know where the money is going. So you give these guys $2.1 million, and they use it on themselves. But let's just keep going. Heart of David continued receiving grants from the state paid out through the federal government's Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program after Brett DiBiase left MDHS. The organization reported using the funds it received in 2017 for general church speaking engagements, religious conferences, school assemblies, and wrestling events, according to the Clarion Ledger. In a 2018 contract, the nonprofit said the money would be used to establish a network of partnerships, services, and resources throughout Mississippi communities for faith-based and self-activities. The TANF program, Temporary Assistance to Needy Families program, is run by states through grants from the federal government. States are responsible for distributing these funds to achieve 4 goals: assisting needy families in caring for their children, job preparation to end parents' dependence on government benefits, how ironic, reducing out-of-wedlock pregnancies, and encouraging 2-parent households. Okay, so we got the story. This is the base of the story here, that Brett DiBiase supposedly embezzled this money, used some of it to pay for a drug rehab. Who knows where the hell the rest of the money went. But this is just government waste. When government gives away money, they don't pay attention to who has it. They just give money to. And for starters, we need to talk about churches, because there is a separation between church and state, and there should be. I'm not saying that there's this hard and fast rule, but there certainly should be. And this is what happens when faith-based organizations should not be taking government money, especially if you don't want any regulations and you don't want to pay taxes. You probably should not be taking government money, even though I believe that and you can look at throughout history, faith-based organizations have been the best for public health and have generally been a public good. Okay, as far as maintaining family structures, building trust in the community, faith-based organizations have really been good for that. But when you have government money floating around in it, now you just have people who are just sharks who are involved. They're not involved because they want to help brethren who are in the church. They're in it for the money. Okay. And it's unfortunate that Ted DiBiase Sr., the $1 Million Man's face is on all of these goddamn news articles because he hadn't had nothing to do with this. Okay. So he didn't have anything to do with this stuff. So it's kind of messed up. But let's go to the second article. Okay, so from the New York Post, it says, Brett DiBiase, the son of well-known former wrestler Ted DiBiase, is in hot water, arrested as part of a federal welfare scam in which $4 million was allegedly stolen that was supposed to go to a nonprofit organization. Of that cash, at least $48,000 was used to pay for his drug rehab. Indictments issued Wednesday revealed. Wednesday being February to something. They didn't. This story was written on February the 7th, so I don't know what day that was. You know, all you smarter people than me can go back and figure out what day it was. Okay, the former head of the Mississippi Welfare Agency and others are in trouble for what Republican Auditor Shad White called a sprawling conspiracy. The son of the $1 Million Man and a former wrestler himself, the 36-year-old DiBiase allegedly received $48,000 to get help for his drug addiction. In an attempt to cover it up, the payments allegedly were made by the department's former director, John Davis, and Nancy New, owner and director of the Mississippi Community Education Center and New Learning Resources, to make it look as if DiBiase was being paid to teach classes about drug abuse. Invoices and other records were allegedly falsified. So, Ted DiBiase, it's not fair. It's not fair that good old Ted is involved with this shit. His name and his face is on everything. The story is about Ted, even though Ted didn't do shit. He didn't have nothing to do with this shit. It was his son, who was also a wrestler, who wrestled as Ted DiBiase, which is fucked up because his name's not Ted. His name is fucking Brett. But people won't click on these articles if you use the name Brett DiBiase, right? People click on the article because they're like, oh my God, I remember Ted DiBiase from the 1980s. He was, this asshole who, would stick money in people's mouths, and he was the dastardly heel who would, pay somebody to dribble a basketball, and then he, you dribble it 10 times. When you get to 9.5, he kicked the ball away, and they think like he's just living the gimmick. In 2020, he's just like, he out here living the gimmick and stealing money from churches. When if you read the articles and stuff like this, it's not fair that his name is being drugged through this. And I bet he's pissed. He's probably pissed. It's not fair. Ted didn't do anything wrong. His son's the asshole. But I will say, I'm fundamentally against government giving away huge sums of money like this. It's just not what the government is supposed to be doing. If people needed that money and the organizations are really fulfilling a need, people would pay for it out of their own pockets. You can get private donations, and you can still arrest people for fraud, by the way. If you went to somebody and said, hey, we're going to use this money for X, Y, and Z, and then you use it on yourself, that's still fraud. It's still embezzling. You still can get arrested. It doesn't have to be government money. The problem is, when you have government money, there's no accountability because nobody's paying attention to where the money went. Okay, so I'm surprised, they didn't say how long this was going on, but I wouldn't be surprised it was going on for years. Who knows how long it took for them to get $4 million in government funds. I'm pretty sure they didn't get a check for $4 million. It's probably built up over time with bits and pieces here and there for different programs. Obviously, like you said, the 10th program, but it sounds harsh when people say it, but you have to be against these programs because you just don't have anybody watching people to know where this money is going, and then you don't see any outcomes. Because these programs are supposed to be taking care of social problems, the social problem existing means that people want more money. And then the social problem continues to exist, and they say, well, you didn't give me enough money. The number one way to look at that is the education system, right? The more money you spend, we spend more money on school than just about any country in the world, and we have worse outcomes. Why? Why do we spend so much money on schools and have shit outcomes? Because when you look at where the money goes, The money doesn't go to the students. It doesn't even really go to the schools. It goes to the administration. The administration soak up most of that money, and then you got kids who don't have books. You got kids who, in school and the floors are warped. There's always that problem when it's government money. It's very rarely going to be a problem in a private institution because they're going to get that money piecemeal, and then the people who are in the private institution who are given the money are going to want to see outcomes. The government doesn't really ask you if you need, they give it to you based on need, but they don't look for any positive outcome, So they'll just give you, and then it's also patronage. You can give, again, Brett DiBiase worked in the government. So he used his government clout to get this money. It's a patronage system. It's like, oh yeah, I know this guy, I trust this guy, I give this guy the money, and then he ends up taking the money. And it's almost always the case, especially in, I hate to go back to the school system, but it's the same thing in school system. A lot of the people who work on the school boards and all this type of stuff are people who used to be, school administrators. So they know that money is getting soaked up by school administration costs and union costs and all that bullshit. I mean, we already know that. So this is why, libertarians are usually against government giving away money. It's just, it's just a trap. It doesn't work. So it's the hot tag. We gotta. I found something that actually gives more detail to the information that we got here. So let's use this one. I'm gonna tack this one onto the other articles that I read already. So let's talk about it. It's from the WLOX, which I guess is the local news from Mississippi. So Jackson, Mississippi. State Auditor Shad White announced 6 arrests linked to the largest public embezzlement scheme in state history. The arrests may include more than $4 million in embezzled government money. The arrests include John Davis, former director of Mississippi Department of Human Services. According to an indictment, Davis conspired with Nancy New to convert funds from the Mississippi Community Education Center to different bank accounts to pay RISE, a drug treatment clinic in Malibu, California, in order to pay for drug treatments for Brett DiBiase. Documents show Davis helped DiBiase obtain $48,000 in taxpayer money through a business called Restore 2 LLC. Davis faces up to 10 years in prison and a $30,000 fine. Brett DiBiase, a former professional wrestler, according to an indictment, DiBiase conspired with John Davis and Gregory Smith to defraud the Mississippi Department of Human Services. DiBiase was paid $48,000, acting as the business Restore 2 LLC, using a series of fraudulent and false claims to receive payment. A second charge showed DiBiase helped cover these payments by falsifying documents, invoices, books, reports, and ledgers. DiBiase faces up to 10 years in prison and a $15,000 fine. Ann McGrew, a former accountant for Mississippi Community Education Center, according to documents, McGrew conspired with Nancy New and Zachary New to convert funds from MCEC, which is the Mississippi Community Education Center, to bank accounts owned by New Learning Incorporated, a private company owned by Nancy and Zachary New. This embezzlement includes more than $2 million that was used by the news for their own use. A second charge says McGrew helped cover up these funds by falsifying information. McGrew faces up to 25 years in prison and a $35,000 fine. Zachary New, assistant executive director of MCEC, and Nancy New, owner and director of MCEC. The news indictments includes more than 10 charges. The charges show he converted funds from MCEC, which is the Mississippi Community Education Center, to several other bank accounts. That money was then used to invest in whoa, this is a nightmare word. Prevacus and Prezolo MD, which were owned by Nancy and Zachary New. Oh. This includes $1.9 million that was used to fund Prevacus, Prevacus, and another $250,000 used to fund Press OMD. Nancy and Zachary New faced up to 170 years in prison each and $225,000 fine each. Gregory Latimer Smith, a former employee of the Mississippi Department of Human Services, documents show Smith worked with Davis and DiBiase to help funnel $48,000 to DiBiase through Restore 2 LLC. Smith faces up to 15 years in prison and a $20,000 fine. So there's 6 indictments. And it is a massive case. This is massive. This is amazing. So apparently the news, Zachary and Nancy New are the masterminds here. They're going to get the most time, 170 years in prison each. That's 2 life sentences for embezzlement. That's 2 life sentences. Okay. This is insane. But let's focus on Brett DiBiase because he's the wrestler, and this is a wrestling YouTube channel. So it says that he conspired with John Davis and Gregory Smith. So John Davis is the former director of Mississippi Department of Human Services, and George Smith, was that his name? Yeah, Gregory Smith. Gregory Smith is the former employee of Mississippi Department of Human Services. So people who worked in the Department of Human Services helped him steal money. The question is why? Why would they do that? That doesn't make any sense. Why would they do this? I want to know why they would do this. Just working with somebody. Look, I'm not going to help you steal $48,000, my dude. You know. All the other stories make it sound like Brett DiBiase stole a bunch of money, but really the news stole a lot of money. The Zachary New and Nancy New, they stole, $1.9 million. They stole like a lot of cash. $48,000 ain't nothing to sneeze at either, Brett. But this is when you dig a little bit, you see that he really didn't. Well, he still stole money from the government, so. But this is kind of nutty. This story gets crazier and crazier every time I read more of it. But I do want to know why they helped him. What was it about him, like, that he just needed to be, like, for you to put your life on the line for good old Brett DiBiase, But hey, what can you say? I'm probably not going to do another hot tag, but I did stumble across this and I thought it gives more information. So this is going to be probably the first part of the video, and then we're going to go into the Sports Illustrated video and the New York Post part of the video. So, see ya.